Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends. In perhaps one of the worst kept secrets in a while, Tacticus is doing a crossover event with Dawn of War 4, and 2 new characters have been released. In this video, we'll go over Thothmek the Chronomancer. I did a short lore section for Cyrus, given the crossover nature of his release, but Thothmek has a lot less information available about him. Essentially, he is a Chronomancer and leads the Necron forces in Dawn of War 4. In broader 40k lore, Chronomancers are cryptechs, Necron specialists who harness temporal energies, wielding weapons that slow down or speed up time itself. Their equipment confounds enemy attacks and hastens allies through time. That has been translated well into this character's kit. If you're here for a 15-second summary, Thothmek is a PvP-focused character, where his kit centers around buffing mechanical units. His active does an area of effect suppression against enemy units, or stuns summons. The affected units take bonus damage when they are next attacked. His passive provides adjacent allies a damage reduction against the next attack, like a sort of Terminator armor style defensive buff against the first attack. As I've said, I think his value will mainly be in PvP as a support unit, but I think that passive effect will give him some extra strength in raid and horde modes. Thanks as always to my Patreons and YouTube members for their support. Thothmek is a rare unlock via 2-week hero release event. I almost always compliment Snowprint's art department for the fantastic job with model and animations, but Thothmek has some really awesome ones when we get to the gameplay section. He has 3 traits: Living Metal, the Necron faction trait, Flying and Suppressive Fire. He has a 1-hit physical melee attack and a 2-hit range 2 energy attack, and he is the first Necron to use a block item and a block booster. Stats and abilities are at max epic rather than max legendary after popular request. Talon, Tacticus Ambassador and friend, has helpfully done some analytics to help create this radar chart for stats. This character's defensive stats are pretty weak, with health and armor on the 23rd and 37th centiles respectively. His offensive capability isn't super exciting either, and all this reflects this character's support nature on the battlefield. Thothmek's active ability is Chronometron. Within a 2-hex radius, it either suppresses enemy units or stuns summons for a turn. It also applies an effect to those characters that lasts until the end of the battle, where they take additional damage from the next attack made against them. The passive ability, Time Splinter Mantle, triggers every turn, so on both yours and the enemy's turn. It gives Thothmek and all friendly adjacent mechs a buff that reduces incoming damage of the first attack. The abilities seem straightforward at first glance, but let's look at the gameplay. The active looks super cool visually. Thothmek activates it and this cool time bubble thing pops up. Affected enemies are either suppressed or stunned depending on if they are a summon or not. That suppress or stun effect lasts for a round, but the other part of the debuff, the extra damage taken, lasts until the end of the battle, until an attack is made. As a quick reminder, the active ability does no damage, so it doesn't get rid of Terminator armor, and the suppression effect also doesn't work against Terminators. All you end up doing to these units is giving them the bonus damage debuff. I think it's kind of flavorful that this Necron guy does all this fancy time stuff, but the slow-moving and durable Terminators just don't seem to care. The passive is awesome and is a big part of why I'm super high on this character. It triggers every turn, so both on our turn and our enemies. In this clip, you can see that we use it to essentially eat a bunch of Overwatch attacks without consequence, and then on the following turn, the enemies that attack us have to work through the Time Splinter Mantle again. It's awesome, and by the way, I love how cool this character's ranged attack looks. In a 1v1 type battle, it means that most enemies won't be able to kill Thothmek. The passive really elevates the mechs in a PvP setting, and I've heard people describe it as a sort of Terminator armor type effect, but I think it's so much better than that. It even works on psychic and direct damage. It is possible I'm overrating it, but I've just been so impressed in my testing so far. There isn't really a huge amount of math to be done when looking at his abilities. The active bonus damage is basically identical to Eldryon at the same level, with the bottom number being the base buff, and then the higher mechanical number being equal to Eldryon's Aeldari buff. The passive prevents around 850 damage at level 35. It is hard to compare that to something else in the game, since this is such a unique ability, but that's a sizable force field, and when you play with the character it feels like the passive just ignores the first attack every turn. I know I'm waxing lyrical about this passive, but maybe this next clip will help illustrate why. Against a Rayvas of the same rarity and with maxed abilities, just to keep things equal, you can see how little damage the Overwatch attack does, and Rayvas even has the extra 33% damage from ranged specialist. It's just so good. I don't really know where to easily fit this information in, but this screenshot has been taken from Tacticus Planner. It is an excellent website and tool for those playing the game, and you can see that Thothmek has a much kinder upgrade path than the older Necrons, who are among the most expensive in the game to upgrade. I hope Snowprint extends this kindness to the rest of the faction and other vintage characters. Thothmek's guild raid use is interesting. I wonder if his passive enables the mech team to tank certain boss abilities that they otherwise wouldn't be able to. For example, I wonder about bosses like Mortarion and the Avatar of Cain, who have reasonably high damage area of effect abilities. The mech team are on the downward swing, but they're still reasonable, and I wouldn't be surprised if Thothmek finds some niche use within the team. Thothmek does not release with a relic. I think Snowprint are changing their focus as seen this patch, where they are moving away from releasing relics for new characters and instead giving them to older ones. I like that shift in direction, since newer characters will comparatively take much longer to get to Mythic. Thothmek's Mythic Missions are listed on screen. None are particularly difficult, but I kind of love that if Thothmek kills Cyrus, he completes all 3 parts of Mission 4 at once. If you haven't seen my Cyrus showcase yet, consider this my plug. From an LRE perspective, Thothmek is usable for mechanical, suppressive fire, and flying tracks, as well as the physical and energy damage tracks. The mechanical track is already quite crowded with some really strong units and summoners, but honestly, within that track I would put him in the good tier because of the buffs he confers to your characters and summons. Within the suppressive fire track, he's probably among the better options by virtue of his shield, but without other mechs he looks a bit less appealing, so I've moved him down to average. The flying track has some good mechanical units, but the track also has a lot of non-mechs. I think the best characters here are Rayvas and Aleph Null due to their synergy, and Thothmek simply adds to that. Farsight is reasonable here if you have his Dawnblade and also happens to be a mech. The physical track already has a lot of summoners, but best among them is Tangita. Thothmek's passive helps him and his Skitarii survive. I've put him in the good tier here, but could see him moving up in the long term. The energy track is small, but has some mechs as the better options. Not quite enough for me to put Thothmek into the top category, but he's still probably top 5. I haven't listed the cutoffs for ability thresholds here since you can get those fairly easily on any Tacticus website. On screen here is the character summary in my usual infographic style. Thanks once more to Tawan, Tacticus ambassador and friend, for his help here. I'll leave this on screen for a bit for you to digest. We can conclude by assessing Thothmek's usability. Let's start with Horde modes. The passive effect is awesome, but probably at its worst in a wave-based mode where your characters are being attacked multiple times per turn. I still think it's going to be pretty decent and probably will enable some cute turtle-style gameplay. I've given him a 3 for now, but could see that being higher, and I think it's better to start conservative in general. What about War? Well, he works really well in a PvP setting with both abilities, and I think I'd like to try him in a mech team. That team has historically been successful or failed if Exeter Road died, and I think the extra staying power from Thothmek's passive, plus the suppression he applies to enemies, might make the team a bit more reliable. I've given him a 4.5, that might be a bit too optimistic, but I'm really high on this guy. Finally, Raid. I spoke a little bit about his niche use against high damage bosses. As we progress into the Mythic world and players are increasingly looking for ways for their mech team to survive, he might be a valuable tool. I've given him a 3 for now. Maybe this is all contextual since I haven't been impressed by the recent releases from the Votann, but Thothmek feels like the first really strong character we've had in a while, albeit within a mech niche. I'll maybe sign off there. I hope that was useful and you enjoy playing with the character. Thanks as always to my Patreons and YouTube members for their support, and bye for now.